Identical Chinese twins were sold like sheep on Christmas, until a gunslinger said, "I'll bring you home." Christmas morning arrived quietly in the small rural town, but the cold was sharp and unforgiving. The sky was pale, and a thin layer of frost covered the ground. People wrapped themselves in thick clothes as they walked toward the open market, carrying baskets, ropes, and hope for good bargains. Laughter, chatter, and the sound of bargaining filled the air. For most people, it was a day of warmth, food, and family. But in one corner of the market, far from the smiles and bright decorations, two small boys stood in silence. They were identical twins, about 8 years old. Their faces were the same, round cheeks, tired eyes, and hair cut too short by rough hands. They wore thin jackets that were too big for their small bodies, jackets that once belonged to someone else. Their shoes were worn and cracked, barely protecting their feet from the cold ground. They stood close together, so close that their shoulders touched, as if separating even an inch would be too painful. The twins did not cry. They had already cried too much in the days before. Now they just stood there, holding each other's hands tightly, trying to understand why they were there. They did not know much about the world, but they knew something was wrong. Very wrong. A wooden sign stood behind them, written in rough letters. People didn't read it for long. They already understood what it meant. The twins were being sold. Nearby, men argued loudly over chickens and goats. Coins clinked, ropes were pulled, and animals cried out. The twins flinched every time someone raised their voice. Sometimes people stopped in front of them. Some looked curious. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked at them the same way they looked at the animals, as something to be bought. One man bent down and lifted one twin's chin, inspecting his face. The boy froze. His brother squeezed his hand harder. The man muttered something about age and strength, then walked away. Another woman whispered to her companion, shook her head, and turned her eyes away, as if looking too long would make her feel guilty. The twins did not understand the words being spoken around them, but they understood the feeling. They were not wanted as children. They were being treated as objects. Their story had begun weeks earlier in a small, broken house on the edge of another village. Their parents were not cruel people. They were poor people who had run out of choices. The winter had been harsh. Work had disappeared. Debt had grown like a shadow that never left. Every night their parents argued in low voices, thinking the children were asleep. The twins often lay awake listening. They heard words like money, food, and survival. They heard their mother crying quietly, covering her mouth so no one outside would hear. They heard their father sit in silence for hours, staring at the floor. The twins did not understand the details, but they felt the fear in the air, thick and heavy. On the night before they were taken away, their mother hugged them longer than usual. Her arms trembled. She smelled of smoke and cold. She told them to be brave, to listen, to stay together no matter what happened. The twins nodded, trusting her, even though something in her voice made their stomachs ache. That was the last night they slept in their own home. Now, standing in the market, the twins waited. Time felt strange. Minutes stretched into hours. Their feet were numb. Their stomachs were empty. Christmas bells rang faintly from somewhere far away, but they sounded like they belonged to another world. One twin, the older by just a few minutes, tried to be strong. He stood straight, even though his legs shook. The younger twin kept his head slightly lowered, staring at the ground. Every so often he glanced up, searching for a familiar face that never appeared. People continued to pass. Some brought gifts wrapped in paper. Some laughed with children of their own, holding small hands, adjusting scarves, brushing snow from shoulders. Each time the twins saw this, something inside them twisted. They did not fully understand why, but they felt a deep sense of loss, like something precious had been taken without explanation. A man responsible for the sale stood nearby. He watched the crowd carefully, rubbing his hands together to keep warm. To him, this was a transaction, not a tragedy. He spoke loudly about the twins' health, their strength, how they could work hard. His words felt sharp, even though the boys didn't understand every sentence. The tone alone was enough to make them shrink inward. At one point, a small argument broke out between two potential buyers. Voices rose. The twins flinched again. The younger one's eyes filled with tears, but he did not let them fall. He remembered his mother's words, "Be brave, stay together." So he squeezed his brother's hand even tighter. Snow began to fall lightly, dusting the market in white. The twins watched the snowflakes land on their sleeves and melt away. For a moment, they forgot where they were. The world felt quiet, almost peaceful. But the peace did not last. Coins changed hands somewhere nearby. A goat was led away. A cage of chickens was lifted onto a cart. Each sound reminded them that time was moving forward, and soon it would be their turn. No one asked them their names. No one asked what they liked or what they feared or what they dreamed about. No one asked if they wanted to be there. As the morning wore on, the crowd slowly thinned. Some buyers left satisfied, others left disappointed. The twins remained. They began to feel invisible, and yet painfully exposed at the same time. The older twin wondered if this was what disappearing felt like. Not vanishing all at once, but slowly, as people stopped seeing you as human. He did not have the words for this thought, but the feeling settled deep inside him. The younger twin's thoughts were simpler. He just wanted to go home, even if home was cold, even if there was little food. At least home was familiar. At least there they were someone's children. The bells rang again, louder this time. Somewhere people were sitting down to warm meals. Somewhere families were opening doors to let loved ones inside. Somewhere Christmas was happening the way it was supposed to. In the market, the twins waited for whatever came next. They did not know that this day, the worst day of their lives, was also the day their path would cross with someone who would change everything. They did not know that someone was watching from a distance, someone who had not planned to stop, someone who carried his own scars. For now, they only knew the cold, the fear, and the tight grip of each other's hands. And they waited. The man arrived in town just as the morning fog began to lift. He walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because he had learned long ago to never rush into places filled with people. His boots were worn, his coat was heavy, and his presence felt different from the rest. He was not there to celebrate Christmas. In fact, he barely noticed the decorations tied to doors or the small paper lanterns hanging from wooden posts. People in town knew him only by sight. Some called him a gunslinger, though he rarely spoke and never boasted. He carried a weapon, but he did not carry pride. His face showed lines carved by years of hard travel and harder choices. He had lived a life where survival came first and feelings came last. He had planned to pass through the town without stopping. Buy a little food, warm himself for an hour, and leave before nightfall. That was always his plan. Staying never ended well, but plans have a way of breaking when the past decides to knock. As he walked toward the market, the noise reached him before the people did. Voices, bargaining, animals, laughter. It all blended into one loud sound that made him uneasy. Crowds reminded him of things he preferred to forget. He kept his head low and moved along the edge, watching without being noticed. That was when he saw them. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Two small figures standing too still, too quiet. Children did not stand like that. Children moved, complained, laughed, or cried. These two did none of those things. He slowed his steps. They were identical, same face. Same posture, same fear sitting quietly behind their eyes. They stood close together, hands locked, as if the world might tear them apart if they let go. Something tightened in his chest. He told himself to keep walking. This town was not his responsibility. Neither were these children. He had learned that lesson the hard way many years ago. Caring led to loss. Loss led to pain. Pain stayed longer than anything else. Still, his feet did not move. He noticed the wooden sign behind them. He did not need to read it fully. One glance was enough. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled slowly, then relaxed. He had seen many things in his life: violence, hunger, betrayal. He had seen grown men treated like tools and thrown away. But this was different: children. He stepped closer, careful not to draw attention. He listened to the words people spoke near them. He did not understand everything, but he understood enough. The tone, the meaning, the way voices changed when money was involved. A memory surfaced, uninvited. He remembered being young once, standing alone after everything familiar had burned away. No one had reached out then. No one had said, "Come with me." He had survived, yes, but survival was not the same as being saved. He swallowed hard and pushed the memory down. A man nearby laughed and made a comment about the twins' strength. The gunslinger's eyes darkened. He did not move, but his presence seemed to sharpen the air around him. The twins noticed him then. At first, they were afraid. He looked like someone from a story meant to scare children into behaving. Tall, quiet, serious. But there was something else too. His eyes did not wander over them like others had. He did not inspect them. He did not judge. He simply looked at them. The older twin met his gaze for a brief moment, then looked away. He had learned that eye contact often led to unwanted attention. The younger twin, however, looked back again, curiosity fighting fear. The gunslinger felt his chest ache. He turned away suddenly, angry at himself. He told himself he was imagining things. He reminded himself of all the times he had tried to help before, only to fail. He was not built for this kind of responsibility. He took a few steps, then stopped. Christmas bells rang again. The sound echoed in his head, mixing with another memory. A promise he once made and broke. A life he had walked away from because it was easier than staying. He let out a slow breath. When he turned back, his decision was already made, even if he had not spoken it yet. He approached the man overseeing the sale. His voice was calm, steady, without threat. That was what made it powerful. "How much?" he asked. The man looked him up and down, surprised. He named a price higher than it should have been. He saw the weapon, the coat, the quiet confidence. He tried to take advantage. The gunslinger did not argue. He reached into his pouch and placed the money down. The sound of coins hitting wood was loud in the sudden silence. People turned to look. The twins stared, not understanding what was happening but sensing a shift. The world around them seemed to pause. "They're coming with me," the gunslinger said. That was all. No long speech. No explanation. The man nodded quickly, not wanting trouble. The crowd slowly lost interest. A sale was a sale. People moved on to other things. The twins stood frozen. The gunslinger knelt in front of them, lowering himself so he was not towering over them. He removed his gloves, revealing hands rough with scars. "You're safe," he said slowly, using simple words. "I won't hurt you." The boys did not answer. Trust did not come easily. He nodded, understanding. "You don't have to talk, just stay together." They already were. He offered them his coat. They hesitated, then accepted, wrapping it around their shoulders together. The warmth made their eyes widen slightly. Without another word, he stood and motioned for them to follow. As they walked away from the market, the twins looked back once. The place where they had stood felt like a bad dream fading in daylight. The gunslinger did not know where this road would lead. He did not know how to care for children or how to build a home. All he knew was that he could not leave them there. Snow continued to fall as they walked out of town. Behind them, Christmas carried on as usual. Ahead of them, something unknown waited. And for the first time in many years, the gunslinger did not walk alone. The road away from the town was long and quiet. Snow covered the ground in a thin white layer, making every step slow and careful. The gunslinger walked in front, his pace steady but not fast. He made sure the twins could follow without struggling. Every few steps he glanced back, just to be sure they were still there. The twins stayed close to each other, wrapped in the heavy coat he had given them. It was too big, but it was warm. They shared the warmth without speaking, moving as one. Neither of them asked where they were going. Neither of them asked who the man was. After what they had been through, questions felt dangerous. The silence was thick. The gunslinger was used to silence. He had spent years traveling alone, speaking only when needed. But this silence was different. It felt heavy, filled with fear and uncertainty. He could feel it pressing against his back. After a while, he slowed down and stopped near a group of bare trees. He crouched and lit a small fire, shielding the flame from the wind with his body. The twins watched carefully, ready to run if needed. He noticed their tension and felt a sharp pain in his chest. He reached into his bag and pulled out some bread. He broke it into pieces and placed them on a clean cloth, then pushed it gently toward the twins. "Eat," he said softly. "You need strength." The younger twin hesitated. He looked at his brother, waiting. The older twin nodded slightly. Slowly, they reached out and took the bread. They ate quietly, as if afraid the food might disappear if they were not careful. The gunslinger turned his face away, pretending to check the fire. He did not want them to feel watched. As they ate, memories rose in his mind. Not happy ones. He remembered nights when hunger was his only companion. He remembered learning not to trust kindness because it often came with a price. He wondered if these boys felt the same way now. When they finished, he poured water into a small cup and handed it to them. Again, they shared. The younger twin finally spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. Are we going back?" The gunslinger understood what he meant. Back to the market, back to fear. "No," he said firmly, "not back there." The boys relaxed just a little. "Where then?" the older twin asked. The gunslinger paused. He realized he did not have a clear answer. He had spoken words in the market without thinking too far ahead. "I'll bring you home." But what was home? A place, a feeling, a promise. "Somewhere safe," he said at last. "We'll figure it out." The twins looked at each other. Somewhere safe sounded good enough for now. They continued walking as the day slowly faded into evening. The sky turned soft gray, then pale blue. The air grew colder. The gunslinger found a small abandoned shed near the road and decided they would rest there for the night. Inside, it was dry and protected from the wind. He cleaned the floor and made another small fire. The twins sat together, watching the flames dance. Fire was comforting. It reminded them of home, of nights when their mother cooked simple meals and told them stories to distract them from hunger. The gunslinger noticed how their eyes followed the fire. He wondered what they had lost. He wondered what scars they carried that were not visible. As night settled in, the younger twin grew restless. He shifted and shivered despite the coat. The gunslinger took off his own blanket and placed it around them without a word. The twins froze, then accepted it. "Thank you," the older twin said quietly. The gunslinger nodded. Words felt unnecessary. Later, as the twins drifted into sleep, still holding onto each other, the gunslinger sat awake. He listened to the sound of their breathing. It was uneven at first, then slowly calmed. He felt something he had not felt in a long time: responsibility. It scared him. He thought about the road ahead. Food would run out. Winter would get worse. People might ask questions. He did not know how to answer those questions. He did not even know the twins' names. He realized then how little he knew about caring for others. His life had been shaped by survival, not nurturing. He had learned how to defend, how to endure, how to walk away. None of those skills taught him how to protect two small lives depending on him. The next morning, the twins woke before him. They sat quietly, unsure what to do. When he opened his eyes, he found them watching him, their expressions cautious but calmer than before. "Morning," he said. They repeated the word softly as if testing it. They walked again that day, stopping by a stream to drink water and wash their hands. The younger twin laughed when the cold water splashed his face. It was a small sound, but it surprised all of them. The gunslinger felt his lips twitch, almost forming a smile. As they walked, the twins began to ask small questions about the road, about the trees, about the birds flying overhead, not about their past, not about their parents. Those questions stayed locked away, too painful to touch. The gunslinger answered what he could, using simple words. He found himself choosing his tone carefully, making sure it stayed gentle. By the afternoon, they reached a crossroads. Signs pointed in different directions. Towns, villages, unknown places. The gunslinger stopped and stared at the signs. This was where wandering usually decided his path, but now wandering was no longer an option. The twins stood beside him, waiting. He realized then that whatever he chose would shape their future. He took a deep breath and pointed down one road. That way. The twins nodded, trusting him without fully knowing why. As they walked forward, the gunslinger understood something important. Saving them from the market had been the easy part. Keeping them safe, helping them heal, and building something that felt like home, that would be the real challenge. But as the twins walked beside him, their steps a little lighter than before, he felt a quiet determination settle inside him. He had said he would bring them home. Now, he would have to learn what that truly meant. The road they chose grew narrower as the day went on. Trees stood closer together, their bare branches reaching toward the sky like thin fingers. Snow fell lightly, then stopped, then fell again. The twins walked more confidently now, though they still stayed close to the gunslinger. They no longer followed behind him in fear. Instead, they walked beside him, matching his pace step by step. As they moved forward, the land changed slowly. The road curved, climbed, and dipped. Sometimes they passed empty fields covered in white. Sometimes they passed small houses with smoke rising from their chimneys. The twins watched everything with wide eyes. Every sound felt new. Every place felt like a question. The gunslinger stayed alert. He watched the road, the trees, and the distant hills. He was used to danger appearing without warning, but now his alertness had a new purpose. It was no longer only about protecting himself, it was about protecting them. By afternoon, the cold grew sharper. The twins' steps slowed. The younger one stumbled once, then again. The gunslinger noticed and stopped. "Rest," he said gently. They sat on a fallen log. He checked their hands and faces, making sure the cold had not hurt them. His movements were careful, almost unsure, as if he was afraid of doing something wrong. "I'm okay," the younger twin said quickly, not wanting to be a burden. The gunslinger nodded. "I know." Still, resting is smart. He handed them the last of the dried food from his bag. They shared it without being told. That simple act told him more than words ever could. They had learned to look out for each other because no one else had. As they rested, the older twin asked a question he had been holding back. "Why did you help us?" The gunslinger did not answer right away. He looked out at the trees, at the quiet world around them. Truth felt heavy, but lies felt wrong. "Because I should have helped someone a long time ago," he said finally. "And I didn't." The twins listened. They did not press for more. They understood silence better than most. As evening approached, they reached a small village. It was quieter than the town they had left behind. No market noise, no crowds, just a few homes and a narrow main road. Lamps glowed softly behind windows. The gunslinger hesitated at the edge of the village. Staying meant questions. Questions meant attention. Attention could lead to trouble, but the twins were exhausted. He led them to a small inn at the end of the road. The woman who ran it looked up as they entered. Her eyes moved from the gunslinger to the twins, then back again. She said nothing at first. "We need a room for the night," the gunslinger said calmly. The woman studied them for a long moment, then she nodded. "It's cold. You shouldn't be out in this weather." She gave them a small room with 2 beds and a blanket. The twins had never seen beds so clean. They stood there awkwardly, unsure if they were allowed to touch them. "You can sit," the gunslinger said softly. They did carefully, as if the beds might disappear if they moved too fast. Later, the woman brought them a simple meal, soup, warm and filling. The twins ate slowly at first, then faster as they realized it was really theirs. The gunslinger watched quietly, his chest tight with a feeling he did not have a name for. That night, as the twins slept, the gunslinger sat by the window. He looked out at the quiet village and thought about the road that had brought him here. He thought about all the places he had left behind, all the people he had never stayed for. He wondered if he could truly stop running. The next morning, the village felt peaceful. The twins woke with color in their faces. The younger one smiled without realizing it. The older one seemed more relaxed, his shoulders no longer drawn tight. They stepped outside and the cold air felt different now. Not cruel, just honest. As they prepared to leave, the innkeeper spoke quietly to the gunslinger. "Those boys, they've been through something hard." "Yes," he replied. She looked at him carefully. "So have you." He did not deny it. They left the village with enough food to last another day. The twins thanked the woman politely, their voices small but sincere. She watched them go, worry and hope mixed in her eyes. The road ahead grew steeper. Walking became harder. The twins struggled but did not complain. When the younger one slipped again, the gunslinger picked him up without thinking. The boy stiffened at first, then relaxed. He rested his head against the man's shoulder. The gunslinger froze for a moment. Then he kept walking. That simple act changed something between them. The younger twin trusted him now, not just because he had no choice, but because he felt safe. By the time they reached the top of the hill, the sun was low. From there they could see a valley below, dotted with farms and a river winding through it. The twins stared in wonder. "Is that where we're going?" the older one asked. "Yes," the gunslinger said. "We'll find a place there, a place, not just a stop, not just a shelter." As they walked down into the valley, the gunslinger realized how much he had already changed. He listened more. He slowed down more. He noticed small things, like the way the twins laughed when their feet slid on ice, or how they pointed at birds flying overhead. That night, as they made camp near the river, the twins talked quietly to each other before sleeping. The gunslinger caught pieces of their conversation. They spoke about warmth, about food, about not being afraid anymore. He turned his face away so they would not see the emotion in his eyes. The road was still uncertain. The future was still unclear. But one thing had become certain. They were no longer just walking together. They were becoming something like a family. And for the first time in many years, the gunslinger did not fear what might come next. Morning came softly to the valley. A thin mist hovered above the river and the air smelled clean and fresh. Birds moved between the trees, their sounds gentle and calm. The twins woke slowly, wrapped in blankets, listening to the quiet world around them. For the first time in many days, they did not wake with fear in their chests. The gunslinger was already awake. He had spent the early hours watching the light change, thinking about what came next. He knew the road could not go on forever. Children needed more than movement and shelter. They needed roots. They needed routine. They needed a place where tomorrow felt possible. When the twins sat up, he handed them warm water and the last of the bread. They ate together, then stood by the river, skipping small stones across the surface. The younger twin laughed when a stone bounced twice. The sound was clear and bright. It echoed in the gunslinger's mind. They walked deeper into the valley that day. Farms appeared one by one, small and simple. People worked quietly, tending animals and repairing fences. Life here moved slower. It felt steady. Near the edge of the valley stood an old farmhouse that had been empty for a long time. The roof was worn and the door hung unevenly, but the walls were strong. A field stretched behind it and a small stream ran close enough to bring water. The gunslinger stopped. "This could work," he said. The twins looked at the house. It did not look grand or perfect, but it looked solid, real. "Is this home?" the younger twin asked carefully. The word hung in the air. The gunslinger nodded. If you want it to be. They stepped inside. Dust floated in the sunlight. The place smelled old but not broken. The twins walked slowly from room to room, touching the walls, peeking into corners. Each step felt like a question turning into an answer. They stayed. The first days were quiet and busy. The gunslinger repaired the door and cleaned the floor. The twins helped by carrying small things and sweeping dust. They worked together without being told. At night, they slept deeply, tired in a good way. Food was simple: soup, bread, vegetables traded for small tasks the gunslinger did for nearby farms. The people of the valley watched from a distance at first. They were curious but respectful. They saw how the man worked hard and spoke little. They saw how the twins stayed close to him, how their fear slowly faded. One afternoon, a farmer stopped by with a basket of apples. "Winter's hard," he said kindly, "but it's easier when people help each other." The twins thanked him with careful smiles. The gunslinger nodded, his voice quiet but sincere. Days turned into weeks. The twins began to change. Their faces filled out. Their eyes grew brighter. They laughed more freely. They argued sometimes too, small disagreements that ended quickly. The gunslinger listened, learned, adjusted. He learned their names. He learned what scared them and what made them brave. He learned that healing was not fast, but it was real. Some nights the twins asked about their parents. The gunslinger answered honestly, without anger or blame. He told them that sometimes grown-ups made choices they wished they never had to make. He told them that what happened was not their fault. They listened quietly, holding onto each other. Then they slept. One evening, near the end of winter, the older twins spoke while they sat by the fire. "Will you leave someday?" The question was calm, but it carried fear. The gunslinger looked at the flames. He thought about the life he used to live. The roads, the silence, the running. "No," he said, "I'm staying." The twins nodded, accepting the answer as truth. Spring came slowly, snow melted. The river grew louder. Green returned to the valley. The twins helped plant seeds in the small field. They watched shoots break through the soil and felt proud. The gunslinger watched them and felt something settle inside him. Peace, maybe, or purpose. One afternoon, the village gathered for a simple celebration. Nothing fancy. Just food, music, and shared stories. The twins stood close to the gunslinger at first. Then slowly they stepped forward, joining other children. They laughed and ran. They belonged. As the sun set, the gunslinger stood alone for a moment, watching them. He remembered the market, the cold, the fear in their eyes. He realized something then. Home was not the place where they had ended up. Home was the choice they had made together. Later that night, the twins fell asleep quickly, tired from laughter. The gunslinger sat by the window, listening to the quiet valley. He did not feel restless. He did not feel the urge to leave. He felt at home. Christmas came again months later. This time it was quiet and warm. The twins helped decorate the small house with simple things they had made themselves. Paper shapes, twine, branches from the trees. They shared a meal together. It was not large, but it was enough. When night fell, the twins sat close to the gunslinger and thanked him. Not with big words, but with honest ones. "You brought us home," the younger twin said. The gunslinger nodded, his eyes shining softly. Outside, the stars were bright. Inside, the fire burned steady. 3 lives once broken and lost, now shared one simple truth. Home is not where you come from. Home is who stays.